of advantages can you provide your students with by paying attention to and utilizing their interest in pop culture, particularly around video games such as Fortnite? Today I'm going to be talking to Chris Aviles from the techupteacher.com, and he's going to be sharing with us his thoughts and insights on how you can use pop culture and specifically the video game Fortnite to capitalize on students' interests and motivate them to read, write, and be engaged with content. So stay tuned. All right, everybody, thank you for joining us. I'm here today with Chris Aviles. Chris, thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited.
Yeah, Chris runs a blog called The Teched Up Teacher, which is an amazing blog. And actually, you are the person whose blog I use to learn how to gamify the master's level classes that I teach at the university level. So, awesome. Yeah, if you just a little side note, anybody that's looking to gamify their classes, Chris does this excellent job of breaking it down step by step on his blog. It's super helpful. Chris is a teacher. He runs the Fairhaven Innovates program, and it features running real businesses with his students. And we're going to have you back on. We have to have you back on a second time at some point, because the social entrepreneurship that you do with your students is amazing in and of itself. And I think we're going to have a separate thing.
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah, to talk about it. Yeah, absolutely. But today we're going to be talking about something that might be the bane of some people's existence, as I've heard on the streets, which is Fortnite, the video game that I'm sure everybody's familiar of. And Chris has a blog post I'm going to link to as well, a teacher's guide to surviving Fortnite. And if you're not familiar with what Fortnite is, or you're still slightly confused about it, there is a really great, I think it's 60-second video in there that lays it all out. So we're going to skip the overview of what Fortnite is, let you watch that on his blog, and instead just sort of jump right into how might teachers think about Fortnite in terms of supporting literacy learning for their kids? What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, so let's jump back a little bit, because I want to talk about why teachers should give not just Fortnite a chance, but things like Fortnite a chance. And the best example I like to give is, so last year, as you mentioned, we do social entrepreneurship with my kids, and when everybody was banning fidget spinners, I brought them into class and I asked my kids, okay, how can we make this better? How can we make it cooler? How can we sell some of these? Fast forward 6 months, through an amazing project where I think the kids learned a lot, we wound up selling 50 fidget spinners to Slack for thousands of dollars. And so it's this idea that you can sit and try to fight what's popular and what's in right now, or you can harness that energy and use it to really make a difference in your classroom. And so for me, everybody in my school is playing Fortnite. I see 4th through 8th graders. I had 4th graders playing it. We even had something where I had 2nd to 3rd graders come visit my space. The 2nd graders were telling me about Fortnite. The kids know that I enjoy playing Fortnite. So it was just a constant topic of conversation. It was trying to wrangle them off of the websites, watching the streamers and watching the YouTube videos, getting them to stop reading the guides about Fortnite. So just like everybody else, Fortnite had invaded my classroom. But I believe that we should take what students are passionate about and use it to focus, on their learning. And so Fortnite, even though it is a game, and depending on your age group, may even not be appropriate to play in school. But I think as a teacher, if you know a little bit about how the game works, if you know some of the locations, some of the game mechanics, you can work that into your classroom to better engage, some of your students. And again, that's not the only way you should be engaging students and all that good stuff. But, I've gotten a lot of mileage out of engaging my kids with Fortnite. Some of my toughest kids have now become my best friends because, I'll even leverage it and say, hey, if you do, X, Y, and Z, we could talk about Fortnite for the last 5 minutes. Or I have a lot of kids who, they'll say clip it, which is when they do something really cool on Fortnite, they clip it and then they put all their clips together in like a montage video, and all the kids want me to see it. So I say, guys, you know what, we got to get this done last 5 minutes, right? Then we could, get into that stuff. And so that's just one way you can leverage Fortnite. It is almost the carrot, at the end of the lesson. And like I said, my toughest kids, really responded well to being able to talk about and show me, you know, what they were doing in Fortnite. And we talk strategies. And if you're familiar with the game, the most popular streamer is Ninja. And I actually wound up at a game with Ninja where we had a big battle, and I showed the kids the clip at the end of class. And so kids were just super excited to have what they cared about being discussed in school, being respected in school, you know, not be, you know, don't talk about it. It's, so I think that's just one thing, is just knowing and caring about what your kids care about. And, you know, at the end of the school year is Fortnite. The year before that it was fidget spinners, and who knows what it'll be next year. But I know that I'm going to try to find a way to work it into my class to engage my kids. Now, to answer your question more directly about using Fortnite in the classroom, again, if you know a little bit about the game, the mechanics, how it works, you know, and you could do a little innovative thinking, you can really pull in quite a lot into your classroom. You know, so Fortnite, if you check out the blog that I wrote, when you start the game, you parachute out of a plane with the objective being to land as quickly as possible in, you know, wherever you want to on the map, so you can get your weapons first and, you know, avoid the storm that you're trying to avoid and all that good stuff. And so that's a fantastic geometry lesson. You know, the greatest distance between 2 points is a straight line. And, you know, having the kids, you know, if you have it in the classroom or go home and try it, you know, great homework assignment, time, how long it takes them to get out of the plane, how long do they glide for, come back in, let's make an equation for the best angle to jump out of the plane. Or, you know, each weapon in the game does a certain amount of damage, and it also fires at a certain rate of fire. So if you know, divide the damage by the rate of fire, you get DPS, right? Damage per second. And in the video game world, damage per second is really important, right? You tend to favor the weapons that have the highest DPS. And so having the kids make tables, you know, in maybe Google Sheets, right? Sheets is something every kid should know. How to rate the formulas to calculate DPS, and how to determine, okay, you know, having conversations. A weapon like a shotgun might be front-loaded damage. It fires very slow, but it does big damage each shot. Or something like a SMG fires very quickly, but does very little damage a shot. Talking about scenarios, you know, and even understanding in Fortnite, it has real-world physics, so there's drop-off. You can determine the distance you are from the person. Your weapon damage either goes up or down depending on what weapon you're using. If you happen to have a sniper rifle, the bullet drops so many feet every 50 meters. And so knowing where to put the crosshairs, if you have somebody 200 meters away, you know, you can even dive into something like that with what they work on in the military and how they go through, you know, the geometry of firing rounds. And, you know, it's something that the kids are doing. It's something that the kids are excited about. And so that kind of thing, I think, is a great way to capture that lightning in a bottle and really focus it on, you know, just different applications that they care about.
Now, let me ask you, not every kid is going to be into Fortnite.
No.
Or not every kid, even if they want to, their parents may not let them play Fortnite.
Right.
So how do you deal with that if you're thinking about you know, using Fortnite to write equations and think about
Absolutely.
Physics? Yeah.
So I have another blog post up called How to Integrate and Manage Video Games in Your Classroom. And one of the things I talk about is Fortnite should never be the only option for a problem. Mm-hmm. Right? Student voice and choice is really important. So whether you kind of do that menu style, you give your kids options on how they want, you know, one of the big things is I'm always about how do you want to show me what you learned? Right? And so this idea that the entire lesson is delivered only through Fortnite or only talking about Fortnite, right? You don't have to do that. I can recall even back when I was teaching high school English, I had a tough time engaging a group of girls when we were talking about Edgar Allan Poe. You know, a lot of the kids were engaged in his life and mysterious death. A lot of them were engaged in his kind of weird relationship with his wife. Some of the kids were engaged in just, you know, the terror and the horror of his stories. But I really had, you know, this group I was having a hard time hooking. So, you know, again, how would you like to show me what you learned? Or you have to complete 2 of these 3 assignments out of Edgar Allan Poe, pick which ones you want. And what really worked with them is I put together like a little lesson on Victorian fashion and how weird Victorian fashion was back then. And that's what they seemed to gravitate toward. And so kids had a choice, you know, back then, again, to learn about his wife, his mysterious death, to learn about Victorian fashion. I think I even had a unit that connected one of his stories of course, which I can't remember, but it's the one where they're on the boat and they crash and they draw straws to see who's going to eat who. I think I even connected it to the episode of The Walking Dead that just happened to be on. And the kids are, anytime I can bring pop culture and tie it to what I have to teach them, whether it's a video game, fidget spinners, The Walking Dead, I try to do that. But again, it's never the only way or that's the only option. I would never expect an entire class to do a lesson on Fortnite. But I would absolutely have, again, if I'm doing a lesson on geometry, I do my direct instruction. I do my tasks that I need to accomplish. And maybe once they're showing mastery or getting toward that point, that's when we start to branch out. And, maybe they can, do it in a number of ways. And one of those ways just happens to be using Fortnite as an example.
Yeah, it sounds like, you make a lot of really good points here. One being be aware of, right, the current pop culture trends that kids are, super into, which if you're a classroom teacher, you can't avoid that awareness because it's going to come flooding in. But then you don't shut it out. You might have to bound it, right? Exactly. Like you did and said, hey, you know what, if we do XYZ the last 5 minutes, here are some things that we might be able to do that include your interests.
Right.
Yeah. And then also it's all about how you frame it. It's not like you said, we're teaching with video games or pop culture leading us, right? The objectives are what you want kids to learn are still what's driving you, but you're figuring out how to embed these things like Fortnite into what you do so that it gets some kids engaged. And you're going to have multiple options. Like you said, you could have a menu of things that kids,
exactly.
Not everybody's going to like one particular thing.
Right. And I think it's a really great way to have kids realize that learning is lifelong and learning is everywhere. So often, not to beat the geometry dead horse, but so often when we talk about area and geometry, it's the old, you have a garden. How much fence do you need? You're painting a room. How many gallons of paint? These kids haven't painted a room and likely won't paint a room until they have their first apartment or house. Mm-hmm. So why not change it to the geometry? Some of my favorite lessons are when they talk about shooting basketballs and analyzing, LeBron's shot versus Jordan's shot and who had the better shot. And again, making that one lesson that one group of kids may choose to do. As an English teacher, and maybe even the easiest way to integrate some of this stuff is just to, use the locations and the mechanics, in literacy or writing prompts. Just by telling a kid, hey, you know what, you just landed in Tilted Towers, what happens next? Just by mentioning Tilted Towers, the kids get excited. And it's kind of neat because you can see students' relationships change with you because all of a sudden now, like, you know what Tilted Towers is? You play or you don't play? My kids, I remember when I started working with Minecraft 3 or 4 years ago and I had no idea how to play. So I went down to 4th grade recess and I said, who wants to show me? Mm-hmm. And those kids now are going to be in 8th grade, and those are still some of the kids I have the best relationship with because they were just so excited to show me something they cared about. Yeah. And so, watching the Fortnite clips at the end of class or after school or at lunch, or, having them show you how to play Minecraft or something like that, it just empowers a student and builds relationships. And again, I don't think my kids are ever going to play Fortnite in school. They're definitely never going to play it, free range. Oh, guys, just play. And I give a bunch of different examples of lessons you could do inside the actual game. But like I said, even just mentioning it as a writing prompt or working it into a word problem or, the different physics, the different geometry of what they care about. I mean, even back when we were talking about fidget spinners, they were still popular in my school toward the beginning of the year, even after the summer. And one of the kids chose to make a fidget spinner with a backpack. And when you spun it, it charged your cell phone.
That's really cool.
Right. So that was the idea is, this kid loved to spin the fidget spinner. Even after it kind of died out, he's still spinning away. And he, when we brought a project up and it was time to start our design projects, he was like, I'm going to make a fidget spinner cell phone charger. I said, that's fantastic, dude. And so he took something he cared about. He learned a little bit about how it works. He wound up getting, his motor going and his rechargeable battery. And, he was excited.
Yeah.
The fidget spinner wasn't banned, or he wasn't made to feel bad about liking fidget spinners. They weren't made to feel bad about liking Fortnite. Because I think a lot of times too, when we say, Fortnite, or video games or whatever it may be. I think sometimes intentionally or unintentionally we make students feel bad about themselves. Like they're doing something they shouldn't be doing, or they're doing something that isn't valuable or isn't useful. And I think we got to be really careful about the messages we send. I'm trying to spin up an esports team and an esports league here on the East Coast, partially because I think it'll engage kids and improve attendance and improve grades of kids who come out for the team, but also because it's becoming a huge industry that has real pathways for careers in it. And so, I just got back from Misty, and we were talking to some other esports folks trying to get this off the ground in education. And I was explaining, I had 80 kids sign up for my team. 30 of those kids don't even want to play the game, but they want to run the social media. They want to be the managers. They want to do the fan art. They want to do the casting. They want to do the camera controls. They want to run the Twitch stream. And it's this idea that taking what kids are passionate about and embracing what they love, and then just wrapping what they need to learn around that. You're going to build better relationships with your kids, which is what it's all about, and you're going to empower them, and hopefully you're going to make them, feel good about themselves and improve that self-esteem because you care about what they care about.
That is beautifully said. So thank you, Chris, for being here with us today. So again, this is Chris Aviles. He's the Tech Up Teacher. I'm going to link to the Tech Up Teacher in the show notes. We're going to link to the blog post on A Teacher's Guide to Fortnite. You did mention another post. I can't remember what you said.
Yeah, how to integrate and manage video games in the classroom. It's right on there. It's actually it's the post after Fortnite. It should come up.
Okay.
Under it is, continued reading. But they can check that one out too. And, I have a lot of stuff about game-based learning, which is teaching and assessing with video games. I have a lot of stuff about gamification, which is using video game mechanics to manage it, to engage and motivate your kids. And then I got some fun ed tech, tricks and tips and ideas that hopefully people can learn from, improve on, and, make learning better for themselves and their students.
Yeah, I mean, your website is just it's so full of just amazing resources that I have personally used a lot to sort of push my own thinking about teaching and because I work with teachers, how I push teachers to think about what their instruction can look like in the classroom.
Glad to hear. That's the whole point.
So anybody that has questions, comments, for Chris, head down to the comment section. Talk to us about questions that you might have about video games or, literacy development, how you might structure lessons that draw on Fortnite specifically or pop culture in general. We are happy to chat with you about that and look forward to hearing from you. So thank you again, Chris. Appreciate your time.
Awesome. Thank you for having me.